Listen. The dome breathes like rain. Close your eyes if you like, and let that steady, low exhale settle against the back of your neck. Breathe out with it. The hum is constant and patient. It keeps time the way an old clock keeps time. Quiet and unquestioning. Imagine you are lying under a soft canopy of green light, the last greenhouse on Mars wrapped gently around you, and there is a small world inside that breath. Lily wakes to that sound, the same way she has woken for years. The hum first, then the warm linen of her sleeping pod, then the weight of a hand against her shoulder from habit rather than need, as if the greenhouse itself is pressing a palm down to say, "Morning." It is very early. Beyond the curved panes, the sky is a washed-out red, thin as a memory of sunset. Within, the light is the color of new leaves, muted and good. She pauses a moment, letting the quiet gather at the edges of her thoughts. Listen to the hum, she thinks. Let it be your pillow. Her feet find her slippers with a small, familiar shuffle. The path from bed to kitchen table is a soft ribbon of worn tiles, green stains where 100 pots have spilled their slow growth. She wraps a cardigan around her shoulders, simple, patched at the elbows, and warms her hands around a cup that has been set out overnight. The cup is not porcelain, but a smooth composite that catches the green light and holds it like a secret. The liquid inside smells of earth warmed, and something faintly floral, a tea of leaves saved and steeped like a small ritual. It is not meant to be clever, it is meant to steady. The greenhouse is alive in the way small, beloved things are alive. Leaves bead with tiny dew, which falls in patient drips into shallow channels. The drip is a kind of rain here, a kind hand that pricks the silence. Fairy lights, thin strips of bioluminescent algae wound in soft coils, along the rafters blink like a slow constellation, their pulses answering the main hum. The fans and filters breathe in slow cycles, and the air smells of loam and warmth, and a trace of resin from the tiny solar pumpkins tucked into a low bed. The plants themselves tilt their faces toward the diffuse roof as if to drink the light like bread. She checks the seedlings. Just a cursory pass, fingers barely touching the soil, an old habit of mothers and gardeners. Little green heads, pale stems, the promise of something that might be. Memory slips in with the motion. A small red book with pages softened by years. Her grandmother's seed book, tucked at the back of a drawer. Names in a hand that had known frost and summer both. Small italic notes about how to keep a packet whole through winter. Lily smiles to herself and tucks the memory away, as if tucking a seed back into a pocket. The ritual is patient and precise in its gentleness. She opens the shelving unit, low, rounded like a row of small hills, and lifts a single panel of glass. The sound is a soft click. The greenhouse answers with a sympathetic chorus of drips. She cradles the cup, feels the warmth against her palms, and watches a drop fall from the corner of a leaf, making a tiny ripple in the tray below. The hum keeps time. The lights blink like stars. A cup warms the hands. Outside, the planet is always doing something. There's always a weather of its own. A thin wind that moves the dust in long, secret waves. A distant rumble when solar plates shift slightly with the hour. Inside, everything is constructed against that thinness. The dome is not merely shelter, it is a kind of chapel for small lives. Lily tends it with neither ceremony nor spectacle. Instead, with the soft repetition of days. She waters, she mends, she listens. If this gentle place feels like something you would like to return to, a small possibility. If you find your evenings fit this kind of quiet, consider softly following for more nights inside the greenhouse. Only if you like. Only if you wish. Today begins with pumpkins. They are not the grand orange globes of old Earth stories. Here, they have been coaxed into small sun-honey orbs, thick-skinned and mellow, their color like the inside of a storybook that remembers sunlight. Lily moves among them like someone moving through a familiar room. Her hands know which stems hold firm and which will give if eased. She carries a woven basket on her hip, the fibers worn to a lovely, soft gray. When she cuts a pumpkin free, a clean, careful snip, the smell rises. Not the heavy, sweet smell of spice, but an evergreen, resinous warmth, like a door left open to a cedar closet. Steam will lift from them later, and the whole greenhouse will taste of that warmth. There is a small thermal trough where the pumpkins sit to sweeten, simply a warming surface that keeps their juices coaxed out without any fuss. Steam, warmed and slightly peppered by botanical resin, curls up and lays itself across the domed panes. The greenhouse takes that steam like a blanket. Condensation maps the glass in tiny rivers that glitter in the fairy lights. Lily watches a rivulet make its slow, patient descent and feels the shape of her day. She sets the pumpkins in rows and gently pats the soil at their roots, feeling the familiar give. Seamus arrives sometime in the half-light, as he often does when the world is still forgetting itself. He moves with a careful, measured gait, the bones of his hands knuckled like small barnacles of tenderness and time. He carries nothing with him save for a small cloth satchel and the kind of smile that has settled into his face like a comfortable hat. He says good morning, and the word wraps around the plants as easily as the morning light. Their conversation is the sort that could be overheard without surprise in any quiet place where people share bread. It is soft and slow. Seamus asks after the old apple sapling. Lily says it slept through another night, leaves closed like folded hands. He says his own hands ache less in the mornings now that he has learned to oil them with a light touch. They exchange a small, easy joke about the stubbornness of certain bulbs, and an old laugh that sounds like an exhalation passes between them. The human voice here is one more warmth against the hum. They do not hurry. There is no need to hurry. Lily hands Seamus a plate, simply a slice of roasted pumpkin pressed into a spread of something creamy and bright, an old colony recipe in spirit if not exact terms, and watches him close his eyes at the first bite, the way one closes eyes to catch a remembered song. He compliments the texture, the warmth, the way the sweet and a faint tang of leaf sugars blend. Lily says she used a pinch of something her grandmother called a summer spice. Seamus widens his eyes in that delighted, knowing way someone does when they meet a good secret. As they share that small warmth, the greenhouse feels larger and smaller at once. Larger because of the web of life that connects tendrils and roots, lights and ducts. Smaller because this moment is a pocket of time cut from the great red plain outside. There are other people. There are other lives. But inside, in the hush, the world narrows to 2 cups, 1 plate, the low chatter of the plants. Seamus tells a little story about Earth, not so much to instruct as to share an image. A rain-heavy afternoon with the smell of baking bread and laughter pressing like steam against curtained windows. Lily listens, and in the listening, she is collecting little talismans, images to press into the seed book she keeps in the drawer. It will not serve as an instruction manual. It is a catalogue of small comforts, a ledger of dishes and phrases, and the touch of a hand that liked to fold napkins into neat, small triangles. They speak of things that are acts of kindness, how a neighbor once mended a broken trellis without being asked, how a child left a painted pebble in a pot as a gift. These are small miracles here, not the thunderous kind, but the kind that folds itself into a day and becomes belonging. When Seamus leaves, tipping his chin toward the seedlings, promising to return with a cutting, Lily goes about wiping a plate, the motion slow and meditative. She presses a seed that has come free into a labeled envelope, careful with the handwriting the way people are careful with prayers. The letters on the packet are small and neat. Amber squash. Lineage. Grandmother. She tucks the envelope into the seed book before setting the book back into the drawer. It is an act of continuity, a way to tell a future self that the past was not lost but carried forward in something as simple as a seed. The noon light tilts. Inside the dome, shadows fold differently. The plants lean with a small, deliberate gravity toward whatever sunlight the dome offers. Lily makes a short list for the afternoon. Rotate the seedlings, check the nutrient trays, set out plates for the community harvest later. But the list is an anchor rather than a to-do. Lists here mean time. They do not carry urgency. She moves like someone performing an old, beloved rite. Pinch a stem, smooth a leaf, set a tray to catch condensation. The hum keeps time. The lights blink like stars. A cup warms the hands. There is a gentle rhythm to labor in this place. Work is not the violence of necessity so much as the slow choreography of care. Attending, repairing, remembering. She repairs a sagging shelf with a small length of cord and a patient knot. She pats down a soil clod with the heel of her hand and murmurs something gentle to the young roots beneath the surface. Sometimes she recites a fragment of a lullaby her grandmother used to sing. It is part recipe, part benediction. The tune is simple and fits the pauses between drip and hum like a small bone settling into place. Later, as the afternoon draws, Lily arranges the roast pumpkins on a broad tray for any who come to share. The tray is a small constellation of golds and browns, and when she sets it near the center bench, the light makes the skin gleam like the underside of coins. She thinks of how food here is never merely food. It is a language. It says, "You are not alone." It says, "There is warmth." It says, "Here is a hand to hold." Children drift in as if following the smell, small faces bright against the green. One of them has painted freckles across a nose. Another tugs at the hem of an older sibling's sleeve and asks, very soberly, if the pumpkins will tell stories. Lily smiles and says perhaps they will, if you listen long enough. Families gather quietly, trading small news. Who found a curled leaf shaped like a heart? Whose lettuce has surprising bitterness? Who left a note under an onion pot? And the greenhouse fills with the low, contented sound of people settling into being together. Voices are soft, respectful of the plants and of the hush. The dome converts their talk into a kind of music, a backdrop to the evening. As day moves toward the low, thin dusk here, the first hush of Martian wind brushes the outer shell in distant pulses. It is as if the planet exhales in long, patient breaths. Inside, the hum reacts with a slightly quicker beat, almost imperceptible, and a fine dust makes its presence felt only as a whisper against the outer glass. Lily notes it without alarm. It is part of the weather here, just as rain would be on Earth. The dome muffles its approach into a soft percussion. She checks a side vent out of habit, fingers skimming the metal. There is a faint click she does not remember hearing that morning, a sound like a small hinge learning to move again. She tucks a hand into her cardigan and shoulders a small basket to carry the evening's remaining treats to those who cannot come. The air has the taste of antiseptic mingled with green life, oddly comforting, and the lights above the planting beds settle into a ready, soothing glow. The greenhouse breathes, and Lily breathes with it. The hum keeps time. The lights blink like stars. That night, as the first of the dust gusts draws nearer, she notices a small bend in an insulating flap near the eastern pane, the protective material that helps the dome hold its quiet warmth. It is not a dramatic thing at all, merely a crease where the fold has caught oddly on an edging, like an umbrella left by a doorstep and knocked by a passing foot. Lily reaches out of habit, letting her fingers rest on the fold. It feels cool, a breath against the pads of her fingers, and for a moment she thinks of the umbrella her grandmother once mended with ribbon and care. The metaphor sits soft and plain. Small things need mending. She considers mending it herself for a moment, and then decides instead to leave it be. Some things, she knows, are better watched than hurried. She tightens a small latch on the nearby hatch, the sound a quiet assurance, and moves back to the bench where the tray sits. Outside, the wind lifts, and the outer dome gives a long, thin sigh as dust brushes its skin. Inside, condensation blooms across the inner glass like breath on a window. Drops begin to gather and trail down, translating the outside weather into the greenhouse's own quiet rain. There is a knock at the inner vestibule then, soft as a shell tapped with a gentle finger. Rose is there, framed by the doorway's soft light. She is carrying something wrapped in cloth, the outline of it cheerful and rounded. Her smile is immediate and warm, as if she has a secret that might make everything better. She steps in without any fuss, and the greenhouse folds around her like an embrace. "I thought you'd like this," she says, setting the parcel on the workbench between them. Lily notices, in that first look, the way Rose's breath comes slightly quicker from the walk through the dome corridors, the color bright in her cheeks. Rose's hands are always busy. Even when she comes empty, it is as if the air itself might become a parcel under her fingers. They exchange a few small words, of thanks, of an invitation to tea, and Rose's gaze flicks to the bent flap at the window. There is a shadow of concern there, the kind that belongs to friends who know how to notice small things and feel them as if they were their own. She unwraps the cloth with a slow, ceremonial care. The parcel is not large. It contains a length of insulating fabric, cheerful with a pattern of tiny solar stars. It is not a grand gift, nor is it an extravagant one. It is practical and bright in the way good gifts are. Rose's smile is modest. "I thought it might cheer the flap," she says lightly, and the light in the greenhouse seems to hold for the phrase. Lily touches the fabric as if feeling for the warmth of a hand. It is soft, reassuring. She imagines wrapping the flap gently, tucking the crease back into a proper fold. In the imagining, the worry lessens, the edges of the day smoothing into something manageable. The greenhouse breathes. The hum keeps time. The lights blink like stars. There is a pause then, an ordinary, graceful pause where the world seems to hold its breath with them. They talk of nothing in particular, of a child's painting that needs a place to dry, of a stray seed that caught in a coat pocket, of the comfort of a shared cup. Outside, the gust rises and the dome answers with a long, muffled resonance. Inside, someone laughs softly, and the laugh is like a bell rung under water, clear and slow. The moment is ordinary and whole. Rose offers to help Lily adjust the flap. She moves with the kind of careful confidence that comes from someone who has repaired a dozen small things and knows how to make each repair a small ceremony. Lily reaches for the insulating fabric, and together they work with a quiet choreography. No sharp commands, only the soft interplay of two people used to matching the rhythm of their movements. Their hands meet over the fold, fingers exchanging stories in the language of touch. For a breath, they are entirely focused on a single seam. Fold, press, tuck. It is a domestic poem. And then, almost without noticing, the gust rises firmer. The dome's outer shell hums a deeper note, and a thin, distant creaking runs along an upper seam. Lily feels it underfoot, a vibration like the low thrumming of a distant drum. The inner condensation thickens to a veil, and in the dim green light the droplets scatter the fairy lights into hundreds of tiny moons. The greenhouse leans inwards, as if listening, as if the outside is telling a story in a language too soft for words. Lily steps back and runs a hand along the edge of the newly wrapped flap. It sits neat and safe now, bright with stars, and she feels a small cheering in her chest. Satisfaction the way a gardener feels when a plant finally decides to open. She sets the remaining fabric aside and reaches for another cup. The steam rises and wraps itself around Rose's face, warm and faintly scented, and for a time they stand in the steam like two people in a small fog, and their voices lower, sliding into the hush. A child tugs at Rose's sleeve and says, in a voice that is all sharp and velvet, "Can we hang the glowing leaves now? Can we make the little planets?" Rose laughs, soft and yielding, and promises they will do it after dark. There are plans that are always reasonable here, to hang, to paint, to plant. Plans that carry their weight in lullabies rather than in deadlines. Lily collects plates, refilling them with small chunks of the warm pumpkin. She moves with the ease of one who has done this many times. Set a plate here, a napkin there, a cup for someone who likes to sit alone at the fern bed. She thinks of the seed book in the drawer, and her grandmother's careful hand, and the way care is a language. The hum keeps time. The lights blink like stars. Night thickens a shade more. The gust becomes simply wind, the sound of it now a slow, steady percussion that matches their breathing. The dome's life support breathes slightly quicker still, translating external weather into internal hush. Someone starts a low song, an old earth lullaby reclaimed and coaxed into new shape, and the greenhouse answers with a chorus of leaves whispering against each other. There is a small, satisfying clink when Lily sets the seed book on the table again. She opens it to the page where the pumpkin entry rests, a neat script, a few margin notes in a hand that curves like a vine, and traces a finger along a line of ink as if reading Braille. The ink is smudged in one place, and she remembers laughing once with her grandmother when they spilled a spoon of sugar and pretended it was snow. They had sat in a kitchen with a window like a picture frame and told each other stories until the sugar melted. The memory is sudden and full and friendly. It sits as a warm stone in her chest. Rose leans in and whispers something about tomorrow's market. A small colony gathering where people barter things more gentle than goods. Recipes, cuttings, stories. Lily imagines laying out more trinkets of plant and seed, how the children will clutch their seed packets like promises. The idea is comforting. The greenhouse always has room for one more small joy. She presses the cup to her lips and tastes steam and spice and the clean, faint sap of leaves rubbed between fingers. The taste is a mnemonic. It calls up the smell of her grandmother's kitchen, the feel of soil under nails, the sound of a neighbor humming through an afternoon. It is both ordinary and immense. Somewhere in the pause between one breath and the next, Lily hears the faint, unwelcome scratch of metal against metal, a sound quick and thin and surprising in a space otherwise so intentional. She turns toward the eastern pane and sees, drawn in the dim, a hairline crease where the outer seam meets the dome. It is not large, but it is precise, an incision of need. For a moment her chest tightens, a small instinctive thing. Then she breathes out. There is no alarm. There is method. She slides a palm across the seed book as if asking permission from the past to tend the present, and it feels like an answer. She peers through the condensation with her forehead nearly to the glass and tries to see the crease in more detail. The lights outside color it a slow, metallic blue, and for a second, the bend looks like a silver wrinkle on the planet's skin. She is not alone in seeing it. A pair of small hands presses to the inner pane, breath fogging the glass into a small, imperfect heart. The child looks up at Lily with solemn, wide eyes and asks, "Will it be all right?" The question hangs in the moist air like a single, honest note. Lily kneels, brings her face level with the child's, and smiles the kind of smile that has mended more than one frayed edge. "It will be all right," she says, bracing the words with a steadiness she feels rather than claims to possess. "We will mend it together. We have always mended together." Outside, the dome answers with a long, low note that runs like a seam through the greenhouse. Inside, hands find one another in small agreements. Rose squeezes Lily's shoulder. Seamus, who had meant to return before dark, arrives at the entrance with a lantern's soft glow and an apology in his eyes for the interruption. The community gathers in the way small communities always do, drawn by scent and sight and the need to make things whole. Lily feels, in that assembling, the quality of belonging that has been sewn into her daily rituals for as long as she can remember. It is not grand or theatrical. It is a simple, inexorable thing. A seed saved, a flap folded, a hand offered. The greenhouse itself seems to recognize the congregation and leans in with a deeper, steadier hum. The lights wink like stars. She opens the door to step out into the small vestibule for a moment, the air a thread cooler than inside and dust dry against her face. The sky beyond is a wide bruise of red and indigo, and for a breath she stands and watches the thin smear of sunlight on the horizon. The planet outside keeps its own time, patient and enormous, indifferent to the small dramas of a handful of humans. That indifference is not cruel. It is simply vast. It is a mirror that helps make what is small here feel precious. When she turns back, the greenhouse has arranged itself into a small cluster of helpers, all of them quiet and unhurried, like people gathering around a table to say a prayer in the old English way. They begin to plan with thrift and tenderness. Who can fetch the extra liner? Who knows where a spare strip of cord lies? Who will hold the flap while another slips in the patch? There is no sense of emergency, only the calm momentum of a place that repairs itself the way a body does. Slow, patient, communal. Lily reaches for the packet of seeds she had tucked back into the book and tucks it into an inner pocket of her cardigan. The action is half practical, half symbolic, a promise she makes to herself that the garden will continue. She looks at Rose and Seamus with a private gratitude that floods her like warm tea. The greenhouse hums its approval, a low band that threads them together. The wind beyond rises once more, and the outer shell of the dome gives a long, thin ring, as if replying to a distant, slow bell. Inside, the lights dim fractionally as the life support adjusts. The drip slows from a steady patter to a soft, measured plink. The children begin to hang translucent leaves and small glass-like panels they have crafted to catch the light. A constellation of tiny planets that wobble and catch the green glow. The plants seem to lean toward them in appreciation, leaves whispering encouragement. It is in this small tension, with the flap mended and the planet rumbling softly beyond, that Lily feels a contentment so deep it is almost sleepy. The work of the day folds into the pleasure of a cup and a warm plate, and air moves in the greenhouse like a living thing, steady and slow. The hum keeps time. The lights blink like stars. A cup warms the hands. She notices, half laughing, that some of the children have left seeds in the pockets of their coats for safekeeping. They present them as treasures, their faces solemn and bright. Lily promises to plant them in the spring bed and to write each child's name beside the row. She plays at ceremony, and the children take it as gospel. She thinks of the seed book again and runs a finger over the page where the pumpkin notes sit, as if to anchor herself to continuity. Night deepens. The stories become softer, voices lower. Someone begins to hum the same lullaby Lily's grandmother used to sing. It threads its way through the benches and plant beds, and in the hum of leaves and the drip that now sounds like a distant, slow rain, the greenhouse folds into a sleep-ready hush. Lily moves through the pots with a slow, satisfied air, checking a single lamp, smoothing a cloth over a tray, tucking a blanket into the lap of a sleeping child. At the edge of the bench, where the green light thins into shadow, Lily finds a small folded note left by a neighbor, a thank you for the pumpkin, and a sketch of a tiny house under a tree. She slips the note into her pocket and thinks of mornings to come. The flap they have just fixed will be fine. It will be checked again by noon by someone else, by a different pair of hands. That is the life of the greenhouse. A passing of care, a succession of gentleness. She rises then, feeling a hush settling around her like a cloak. Her movements slow as if the air itself wishes to keep the day from trembling into too much late. She straightens a chair, draws the seed book back into the drawer with tiny reverence, and pulls the drawer so the book is safe. The fairy lights blink a little slower now, like tired stars turning over in their sleep. In the doorway, Rose lingers, as if reluctant to leave the warmth behind. She places a small painted stone into Lily's palm, a pebble the color of the deepest soil, an emblem of the day. It is small and smooth and absurdly precious. Lily tucks it into her hand and presses her fingertips over it, feeling its quiet solidity. Outside, the wind finds a rhythm that is almost musical, and the dome answers with a resonant, contented note. Inside, the greenhouse's breathing slows. There are mouths to feed later, tiny leaves to coax tomorrow, a market to prepare. Each of these threads hums quietly at the edge of Lily's thoughts. But for now, there is still this sweet, full pause where the world seems to be waiting with them, patient and kind. She takes one last cup, emptying the dregs she has been nursing, and sets it on the sink. The clink is soft. The sounds around her are small and domestic. the faint scrape of a chair leg, the whisper of fabric as someone folds a blanket, the distant, familiar cough of the life support system. Lily breathes in the scent of warmed earth and resin, and the faint sweetness of pumpkin, and lets it settle around her like a shawl. At the threshold of sleep, as she begins to lower herself toward the small pod that is her bed, she pauses and looks up through the greenhouse roof. The red sky has deepened into a velvet wash, dotted by sparsely bright stars that seem to watch like patient eyes. The planet's night is very vast. In its vastness, a single green-lit dome is a precious and steadfast point of warmth. She slips into her bed and lets the hum fold around her. The seed book rests in its drawer. The flap sits neatly wrapped with the bright star fabric Rose brought, and the children sleep with their seed packets clutched to their hearts. Outside, the dust settles into patterns like calligraphy. Inside, the beds breathe and drip, and lend themselves to dreams. Lily's eyelids feel pleasantly heavy. She traces, on impulse, the seam of the pocket where she has tucked the day's small offerings, the painted stone, the note, the seed packet. Her hand lingers there as if to hold the day in place. The hum keeps time. The lights blink like stars. A cup warms the hands, and then, before sleep takes her entirely, a subtle sound threads through the hum. A new frequency, faint and almost polite, like a far-off radio trying to find its station. Lily's eyes open a fraction. She listens. The noise is not alarming, only curious, a thin rasp that seems to come from the dome's outer shell. For a second, the planet whispers something she cannot yet make into words. She tucks the small stone under her pillow like a talisman and allows the thought to float away. Tomorrow, she tells herself, there will be time to ask questions. For now, there is the slow, deliberate breath of the greenhouse, the steady drip of water, and the small community sleeping beneath the green light. Outside, the night rearranges itself into deeper colors. Inside, the greenhouse inhales one last long, soft breath. Lily lets it carry her into the sheltered place where dreams and plants and small rituals meet. The hum keeps time. The lights blink like stars. A cup warms the hands. Somewhere beyond the panes, a wind turns and carries dust in a thin veil that momentarily blurs the stars. The sound of that turning is like a page being turned in a very large book. The greenhouse holds its breath with the page. The greenhouse holds its breath with the page. Dawn slides like a thin coin of light under the dome, and the hush broods for a while longer, as if the planet has turned a silent page and left the next to be read slowly. Lily wakes with that soft certainty some mornings bring, the sense that today there is a small thing to be done that will make tomorrow gentler. She rises and moves through the rooms with the same slow choreography she has perfected over seasons. The straightening of a pot, the smoothing of a cloth, the gathering of a few small precious things into a basket. Today is market day, though the market here is more like a conversation that people wear like scarves, soft, portable, and warm. It has folded across the weeks into the rhythm of the greenhouse. A few tables under the dome, a lattice of stalls where neighbors exchange cuttings and recipes, stories and small handmade things. Today, they will also decorate, a custom that began as a child's idea and became, very quickly, everyone's kind of festival. The children will bring translucent panels they have made from old gel sheets. The elders will bring seed packets with marginal notes. Someone will bring music, and someone else will bring bread that smells faintly of something like yeast, and an idea of home. Lily starts simply. Her hands are steady as she arranges a tray of seed cakes, flat, warm biscuits made from the colony's grain and a scattering of toasted seeds, dotted with a crystallized syrup that catches the light. They are not elaborate, they are honest, the sort of thing that fits a cupped palm. She lays them out on a cloth with a pattern of tiny green leaves, each cake given a little space as if shy. Alongside them, she places a small bowl of glossy plant gel panes, the translucent things the children will hang. Where grown-up hands think of glass and kiln, these panes are craft and memory, slips of colored sugar-like gel, colored with hints of berry and leaf and boiled down into shards that catch the greenhouse's light like little planets trapped in morning. The fruit of the dwarf apple trees waits on a low table, steam wreathing their skins where Lily has warmed them enough to bring out a scent like folded oranges and cider. There is a bowl of candied herb sprigs, whose scent is sharp and green, a counterpoint to the warm sweetness that seems to sit in the air between the raised beds. Every plate holds flavors like sentences, each one saying, in its own way, that here is comfort. She arranged the benches with the care she reserves for making a bed, placing cushions where knees might press and towels where small hands might smear jam. She puts a small jar of sugar next to a spoon and another jar with a soft, amber preserve. Conserve made from the solar pumpkins of the earlier day, its aroma a cedar-sweet memory of that afternoon. The tray of seed cakes seems pleased to be attended to. The greenhouse seems pleased to be made ready. People arrive as if summoned by the smell of being wanted. First, a trickle. A mother with 2 small children clinging to her coat, a pair of teenagers who move like a question. But soon the dome hums fuller, threaded with the gentle murmur of voices kept low. They cross the green light and settle, setting small parcels down at their feet, tying strings, unfolding cloths. Someone places a painted pebble on Lily's table, a tiny planet half-shaped with a blue swathe for an ocean. A child offers Lily a strip of paper folded into a boat. Another presses into her hand a sachet of dried petals tied with a string. Each gift is received as if it were a letter. The children are the most important architects of today's warmth. They shuffle in with pockets full of gel panes and glitter, and the solemn intensity of people assembling something that will be remembered. Their chatter is muffled by the dome, as if exchanged under blankets, bright and careful and small. One child, cheeks freckled with paint, insists that the panels hang in a certain order, from red to green to blue, like a sunrise she once imagined. Another, quieter and careful-eyed, brings claft, tiny folded leaves like confetti, saying they are luck for the plant beds. Lily watches them, hands folded around a cup that warms her palms, and her heart feels the even, domestic ache of belonging. She finds Seamus by the dwarf apple sapling, patting the soil with the exact tenderness of someone who has loved things through winters. He carries with him a small parcel wrapped in a striped cloth, and when he unwraps it, there is a row of little biscuits he has made, the dough dense and dark with nut meal. He sets them on the tray and smiles the warm smile that has come to be the greenhouse's sign of welcome. Rose arrives with a coil of ribbon and a pocket full of small bells that tinkle like a question when she moves. She makes no fuss about ribbons or bells. She ties and arranges with the patient, slow hands of a person for whom offering is a practice rather than a performance. Together they create not a market so much as a gentle constellation of human exchange, one that would be difficult to explain outside this dome and unnecessary to try. The exchange instead is intimate, held in the smallness of hands and eyes and shared breaths. The panes are strung like little planets across an awning. The children clamber onto chairs to hang them just so. When the first of the gel shards catches the light, it refracts the green into streaks of cool blue. The greenhouse seems to hold the color for a beat and then release it in a slow sigh. Someone murmurs that it looks like a little sky pinned under glass, and a hush answers, approval, wonder. The lamps are dimmed slightly so the panes can be the stars for a little while. There is music, not loud but steady. A neighbor plucks a small instrument and the notes float like light. The sound is low and warm and acts as another kind of light, painting the faces in soft tones. Conversations fold into this music and become stories, the sort that do not require plot as much as memory. Seamus recounts, in a voice that trembles only slightly, an old joke about a stubborn leak back home. Rose tells a quiet story about the first time she found a seedling in a shoebox and decided to keep it. These are the little mythologies that keep people going. Tales that are less about heroics and more about the slow, unspectacular endurance of kindness. Lily passes out seed cakes, warm and buttered with a smear of conserve. Hands reach out, some swift and greedy, some polite and careful. She watches a child, who is particularly solemn, bite into a seed cake and then look around as if the taste has given them a map. The child finds a corner of a bench and sits with a biscuit, closing eyes in the kind of small rapture adults call delight, and children simply call yes. At the table across the way there is a little station for decoration. Thin tubes of syrup and little trays of candied leaves sit beside a bowl of ground spice that smells like late summers. The children design their panes with steady concentration. Sprinkles placed with the precision of a practiced hand. Patterns traced in the gel as if drawing the shapes of dreams. Lily moves among them, a soft warden of small choices, offering a ribbon, a word, a small encouragement. She listens to a tiny complaint about a pane not being quite the right color, and turns it into an idea. Perhaps the next pane will be exactly what you like. There is a moment when one of the panes slips from a child's fingers and clatters to the floor, breaking into a scatter of bright, sticky fragments. The usual small alarm blooms for a fraction of a second. Then, softly, adults sweep in to help. The fragments are gathered and pressed into a tray where they will be remolded later as a mosaic. No waste, a new design. The child watches this without grief. The lesson here is not loss, but remaking. Someone says, "We will make it a star." And the child beams as if the star has always been there, waiting for the right pieces. The afternoon pulls gently toward a chorus of small satisfactions. Laughter from the instrument. A soft congratulations for the child who managed a particularly neat stripe on a pane. A compliment for the neighbor's brave attempt at a new spice blend. The greenhouse glows with the soft heat of shared purpose. Conversations move to future plans. Who will be visiting the seed exchange next week? Who has a spare cutting of mint? There is no hurry. The hum keeps time. The lights blink like stars. A cup warms the hands. In a quieter corner, Lily sits with Rose and Seamus and talks about bulbs. Tiny, rounded things like tucked-away promises. They discuss, in an easy, non-technical way, the idea of saving certain rare varieties for a small future. Rose has a pocket with a folded paper sachet, and when she offers it, Lily accepts it with a practiced gentleness. The sachet is small and crinkled, the handwriting tight and slightly slanted. Winter light bulbs. Keep warm. It is a note that means more than its paper. It is a trust. The day meanders into evening like a slow tide. As light thins, the panes and ribbons catch a new shade, the green inside the dome deepening into a shaded jewel. Someone in the corner starts a low hum, and the children sit together, their shoulders touching like small islands in a map. The seed cakes have been mostly eaten and the trays cleared. A last plate sits with the remnant of a preserve near it, its gloss catching the light like a little mirror. Lily enjoys these gentle domesticities the way one savors an old book. The market winds down not with a gong, but with people gathering up their parcels and their coats and lingering in doorways as if reluctant to leave a table set with good conversation. Seamus offers to take a few seedlings to a neighbor who couldn't make the day. Rose tucks a ribbon into the pocket of a child's coat. The children scatter like warm pebbles back across the dome, their voices trailing soft, sunny echoes. When the last of the neighbors leave, the dome holds their echoes like a memory soft as moss. Lily moves through the tidy aftermath with contentment, filling a jar with leftover gel paints to be reused later, folding cloths, sweeping crumbs into a small pile that she will sprinkle onto soil as tiny encouragement. She tucks the last seed cake crumbs into her palm and tastes the faint sugar, thinking of her grandmother's hands and the small ways people teach us to make ordinary things into rites. Evening settles into a different kind of quiet. The dome hums a familiar lullaby, not in words but in rhythm. Its life sound matches the pulse of people folding away their day. Lights dim to a nocturne, the fairy strips glinting like constellations no longer in need of audience. Lily walks the beds with a lamp, peering into crevices, nudging a leaf back into place, saying soft things to the seedlings as if their hearing were the heart rather than the ear. She feels, as she often does at the close of these days, the soft grain of gratitude lining her chest. That night, condensation paints the inner glass in strokes of silver. The light from inside picks them out and makes them glow like memory. Lily sits for a moment on her favorite bench and opens the seed book. She turns through the pages, tracing notes with a finger as if reading Braille. There is a neatness to the entries, little scrawls of recipe, of memory, of plant names written in a looping hand. She finds a page where a recipe for jam is written and smiles at the marginal note that reads, in her grandmother's handwriting, for long winter evenings. She places a small pebble on the page to keep it open, the pebble smoothed by a child's fingers from earlier in the day. Outside, the planet breathes on the dome in its patient, indifferent way. A thin swell of wind lifts dust into a long, graceful ribbon. Inside, Lily and Rose share, as they so often will, a quiet tending. The two of them sit, shoulder to shoulder, saving seeds the way some people fold letters, carefully, ceremonially. Seeds are placed into labeled envelopes, small, careful houses for future life. Each envelope is sealed with a dot of wax, not out of necessity, but out of consideration. The act has become a kind of benediction. Rose breaks into a little story then, a small confession, the kind that fits the hush. She tells Lily she once almost left for another dome, somewhere farther away, tempted by the idea of adventure. She speaks of corridors lit in a harsher white, of a time when she thought the green of Lily's dome might be something she had to move toward, rather than belong to. Lily listens, fingers turning a seed between thumb and forefinger, and in the listening, a friend is made of the life once considered and the life chosen. "And what stopped you?" Lily asks, not wanting the answer, only wanting the telling. Rose smiles at the question like one might smile at a small joke. "You did," she says simply, and the words are not boast, but fact. She tells of a single thing that struck her during a walk among other domes. A child pressing their nose to an inner window, as if mapping constellations on the inside of glass. Rose realized then that home is not always the place that has the most light. Sometimes it is simply where the light is shared. They save more seeds. Rose writes a small note and tucks it with a packet. For the little twins. Might be orange enough for their picture plant. Lily presses the note flat with a thumb. The act of saving becomes prayer-like. Quiet, small, and steady. Later, the wind arrives with a different cadence. It is not the playful gust of an afternoon, but the slow approach of night weather, patient and thickening. The dome answers with a deeper hum, the life support working with a tidy, unspoken competence. Inside, condensation beads in a soft veil, and a mist begins to rise from the soil beds, where the warm foot of the day meets the cool hand of night. The air tastes of cool moss and sweet resin. This is the hour for something richer. The conserve Lily has kept for when she wants to make the dome especially kind. She moves to the low trough and brings forward a small pot that holds a dark, glossy substance that is, in texture and intent, a fudge-like conserve. It is not chocolate in that old earth sense, but a near cousin that carries the same round, warm depth. The aroma that rises when Lily warms it is as comforting as a blanket. Deep and slightly nutty with a note of orange peel that has been dried and kept like an old friend. She makes only a small amount, for there are only a few to share. Heat and scent mingle. Steam rises and wraps the rafters in a gentle cloud. The mist in the dome thickens, softening the edges of things. Benches blur. Leaves take on the look of watercolor. Hands are less defined. The effect is like being inside a song. Rose stands close, watching as Lily stirs the pot with a slow, practiced motion. The two of them talk quietly, about nothing of consequence mostly, about the light in a child's painting, about the way a certain herb tastes when crushed in a palm. The conserves are spooned into small squares and set to cool on a tray lined with a cloth. The squares set with a gloss that catches the green light and seems to glow from within. Seamus arrives at that hour, his presence like a familiar punctuation in the day. He carries a small lantern that casts a soft sun beside the plants and offers Lily a bar of dark bread he has kept warm in his satchel. They share pieces of conserve with bread, and it is the kind of ritual that makes a day feel complete, a closing firmament. The flavors are small and honest, and the conversation that threads them is gentler still. Stories that lean into memory and acceptance rather than argument. When the squares are cool, Lily and Rose take a tray out toward the little garden plot by the inner pane where the children planted that morning. Outside the glass, frost has feathered the planet's skin in 100 tiny patterns. It looks like lace at the edge of the world. Lily carries the tray like an offering. They spread the square treats between them and hand them out to anyone who wants one. A child, cheeks lifted to catch the mist, takes one and bites in, eyes wide as if they have tasted the quiet of the earth. After the sharing, Lily and Rose walk the beds together. The mist under the greenhouse lights makes everything look like a thought. They plant a few bulbs into the soil, not with any certainty as to how or when they will wake, but as a tender act of faith. Each bulb is pressed into a small hollow and covered as if tucking it into bed. They whisper tiny nothings to them, promises more than instructions, words that are as much love as anything else. The bulbs, small and heavy in the hand, feel like secrets you keep for a long time before telling anyone. Rose pauses and places a small note beside a bulb. For spring, for surprise. Lily smiles and places her own note nearby. Remember this light. The act is simple and small, and somehow big enough to move both of them. There is a gentle confession made then, the sort that happens in the hush after work is done. Rose tells Lily she is afraid sometimes, of losing things, of the steady erosion of memory. And Lily, in the safety of the dome's hum, tells Rose about the time she misplaced the seed book for a week, and how the panic in her chest was sudden as a sting. They laugh quietly about it, and the laughter is a soothing salve. Seamus listens in, and then, as if answering an old question, shares a tiny truth about his own hands. That they had been clumsy mine years ago, but have learned the poetry of small repairs. Your hands keep what matters steady, he says to Lily, and it feels like a naming, a blessing wrapped in an ordinary sentence. They sit together then in the low mist, and the greenhouse holds their little gathering like a bowl. As night deepens, the soundscape narrows. The music slows to a lull. Voices thin. Footsteps become less frequent. The children begin to fold into sleep. Lily walks through the dome, checking lanterns and tucking trays into covers, pointing a soft finger at a lamp that need not be bright and turning it down so it will not wake the night. She runs a hand along a row of leaves and murmurs a small word of thanks. The hum keeps time. The lights blink like stars. A cup warms the hands. She returns to the bench and sits for a while with a small cup of the warm plant tea she prefers at night. Its taste a comfort, both anchor and sail. She opens the seed book once more and watches the shadows play across its pages. She thinks of the day's small mosaics, the panes strung like planets, the kid's marvelous care, Rose's ribbon, each one a bead on the necklace of the week. Her fingers press the page gently, and she adds with a light hand a line to the seed book. Market day. Small planets hung. Laughter like sugar. It is a notation that is equal parts ledger and poem. Before sleep, Lily does one last round. She tidies the bench, sweeps a little, tucks away the petals someone had left for drying, and puts a small painted pebble into the pocket of the seed book. The pebble is from that morning. It now sits as a small, weighty bookmark. She straightens the flap by the eastern pane, running her hand across the insulating fabric Rose brought, feeling the slight reassurance it provides like a friend's shoulder. When she retires to her pod, the greenhouse feels like a chest of keepsakes, warm, low, full of things that have been tended. She slips under the duvet, a small quilted wrap that smells faintly of the day's spices, and places the seed book in its drawer. She tucks a note into the pocket of her cardigan, an inventory of delights and tasks for tomorrow in arrows and small words, meaningful only to the owner of that hand. Her fingers linger over it like someone who has just read a letter. She looks up through the roof and the stars are more defined tonight. A clear, small firework of points against the velvet planet. Lily listens to the world and hears the dome hum. Not loud, simply present. And in the hum she finds the heartbeat of the place. She folds her hands around the small stone Seamus gave her earlier and lets the steadiness of it speak into her bones. Her last waking acts are a string of tiny rituals, turning off one lamp after another until only a single small globe hovers at the far end of the bench. the one she keeps for late-night readers, smoothing the corner of the quilt, placing a sachet with a pinch of warming spice in the small pocket by her pillow. Each action is a punctuation, a way of saying, "We were here today, we were kind today, and now we may rest." Rose's voice, from somewhere else in the greenhouse, drops into the dim and says, softly and without expectation, "Good night, Lily." Lily answers with the small honesty of someone who does not need to inflate words to make them true. "Good night, Rose," she says. "Sleep with the light at your back." The final hush gathers like a hand closing over a book. The drip of water slows to a dreamlike cadence, less a sound than an idea of sound, and the fans that keep the dome breathing adjust into the night tempo, a slow, warm sigh. The fairy lights blink one final, slow time like eyelids. The greenhouse keeps its vigil, faithful and small. Lily feels the day's edges smooth into something softer. Her eyelids fall like curtains. Thoughts become thin and pliable, bending to the sleep loom. She thinks, almost as an afterthought, of the children hanging their little planets and smiles at the image, translucent, wobbling, like a galaxy you could hold in a cupped palm. "Sleep well," Rose whispers somewhere near the door. The phrase is a small boat on a vast sea. Lily answers without opening her eyes. "Sleep well. The greenhouse will be here when you wake." Outside, the world of red and indigo folds itself further into night. Inside, the beds breathe and the plants murmur. The hum keeps time. The lights blink like stars. A cup warms the hands. If you close your eyes now, you can let the hum be the last thing you feel. Steady, patient, a lullaby in low frequency. Imagine the drip as rain, slow and even, translating the planet's far-off winds into something that sounds like home. Let your shoulders loosen. Let your fingers uncurl from the day's grip, and let the greenhouse hold everything. The small repairs, the seed book, the laughter, the warmed squares of conserve. All of this fits within the dome's quiet kindness. There is no more to do tonight. The small rituals fold away until morning. The seed packets wait, the panes glitter in their sleep like tucked-in stars, and the herbs breathe themselves into rest. The greenhouse watches over its little community the way a careful friend watches someone sleeping, attentive without intrusion. Rest, if you are resting now. Let the soft green light of that imagined dome keep your breath slow. When you wake, if you wish, the greenhouse will be here for another story, another cup, another small, steady act of care. Until then, sleep well. The greenhouse will be here when you wake.